Shapeshifting. For some, the very idea of shapeshifting brings to mind weird, fantastical creatures. Honestly, I used to be one of them. That is, until I was scrolling through my phone and a short video popped up werewolves and vampires, the usual suspects. Watching a man physically transform into a monstrous wolf, something sparked in my mind. Here, a man physically transforms into a beast wolf, I thought. But why can't I transform someone? As that question looped in my mind, I realized the core of you, me, and everyone else is the same, yet incredibly diverse. Before we dive into what makes us common and what makes us unique, let's clarify something crucial. When I talk about non physical shapeshifting, I'm not talking about literally changing your body like a werewolf or a superhero. Instead, this is about transforming consciousness, perception, and identity. It's a journey into the subtle shifts that shape who we are and how we experience the world. From the inside out, our shared blueprint, the commonality. At the most fundamental level, we are all woven from the same cosmic threads. From the smallest atom to the grandest galaxy, everything is made of particles. And within the realm of living beings, particularly mammals like us, there's a remarkable commonality in our physical organization. We all share the same general organs: hearts that pump, lungs that breathe, brains that think, digestive systems that process. This universal architecture allows us to function, to survive, and to interact with the world in broadly similar ways. It's the baseline, the shared operating system of biological life on Earth, the unique code, non commonalities, and the whisper of ancestors. Where the magic of individuality truly begins is with our DNA. It's not just a collection of particles, it's the intricate blueprint, a symphony composed from the contributions of our parents. This unique genetic code dictates how those particles arrange themselves to form our cells, tissues, and organs, making each of us utterly distinct. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and perhaps a little less believable as you put it. But stay with me. While DNA doesn't store direct, vivid memories of past events like a video recorder, the idea that it carries certain influences or predispositions from previous generations isn't as far fetched as it sounds. Take your example of the goat. How does a goat instinctively know which leaves are poisonous and which are safe to eat? No one teaches them a specific do not eat this lesson for every single plant. This isn't about specific visual memories of a poisoned ancestor. Instead, it points to something deeper: instinct, encoded behaviors, and what scientists are increasingly exploring as transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. Think of it like this: DNA isn't just the sequence of A's, T's, C's, and G's. It also has tags or bookmarks on it. Chemical modifications that don't change the underlying genetic code but do change how genes are expressed. These epigenetic marks can be influenced by environmental factors, stress, or even diet, experienced by a parent or grandparent. And crucially, some of these marks can be passed down to subsequent generations. So, while a goat's DNA doesn't remember seeing another goat get sick from a specific leaf, it might carry epigenetic tags that prime its offspring's nervous system to react with aversion to certain bitter compounds, or to develop a heightened sense of smell for specific toxins, or even influence the development of certain neural pathways that lead to instinctive avoidance. It's not a memory of an event, but a subtle, inherited readiness to respond based on ancestral experiences. This is still a rapidly evolving field of study, but it opens up incredible possibilities for understanding how generations are interconnected beyond the simple replication of genetic code. And it definitely makes you wonder about the subtle, inherited whispers that might shape our own perceptions and inclinations, doesn't it? The DNA story, debunking single origin myths. And this brings us to another powerful revelation from DNA: the idea that humanity sprang from just two individuals, like an Adam and Eve scenario in a single location, is not supported by genetic evidence. If we all descended from only two people, relatively recently, our genetic diversity would be incredibly limited, and everyone would look far more similar than we do. We'd essentially be genetic clones with very minor variations. Instead, what DNA analysis consistently shows is a rich tapestry of genetic diversity across human populations. While we do trace our ancestry back to a common ancestral population in Africa, the out of Africa theory, this was not a single pair, but rather a group of individuals with sufficient genetic variation to give rise to the diversity we see today. Scientists speak of mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam, but these are not the sole original mother and father of humanity in a literal sense. Mitochondrial Eve refers to the most recent common female ancestor from whom all living humans trace their maternal line, through mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from mother to child. Similarly, Y chromosomal Adam is the most recent common male ancestor from whom all living males trace their paternal line, through the Y chromosome, passed from father to son. Crucially, they didn't live at the same time. Mitochondrial Eve is estimated to have lived roughly 150,000 to 200,000 years ago, while Y chromosomal Adam is thought to have lived more recently, perhaps 120,000 to 150,000 years ago. They were part of larger populations. They were not the only man and woman alive at their respective times. They simply had unbroken lines of descendants to the present day, while other lineages died out. They lived in Africa. Genetic studies consistently point to Africa as the cradle of modern humanity, with different populations emerging and migrating out of the continent over tens of thousands of years, carrying their unique genetic variations with them. Moreover, this very DNA is what causes the differences in our overall physical appearance, from our hair and eye color to our height and facial features. It's the unique genetic blueprint that shapes our outward form, making each of us visibly distinct. The mental landscape, pure consciousness. Now let's move beyond the physical realm to something even more elusive and profound, the mental. Here, we enter the territory of consciousness, that fundamental capacity for awareness, for processing information, and for understanding our existence. Consciousness isn't just about sensory input, though our five senses certainly play a huge role in shaping our experience. It's about how we perceive everything, both through our sensory systems and, arguably, even without them. Think about it. Sensory perception. When you see a vibrant sunrise, feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, hear the chirping of birds, or taste your morning coffee, your sensory organs are gathering data. But it's your consciousness that integrates this data, interprets it, and creates the subjective experience of a beautiful morning. Your unique brain processes this information, filters it through your personal memories and biases, and colors your perception of that sunrise in a way that might be subtly or dramatically different from mine. Beyond sensory input, but consciousness extends beyond what our eyes can see or our ears can hear. It's the inner voice, the stream of thoughts, the emotional landscape, the flashes of intuition, the dreams we weave in sleep, and even the moments of pure, unfiltered awareness that transcend thought itself. How do we process abstract concepts like love, justice, or purpose? These aren't tangible sensory inputs, yet they deeply shape our reality. How do we just know something without logical deduction? These are all facets of consciousness at play. This is where the idea of non physical shapeshifting truly begins to take root. If our perceptions, understanding, and even our very sense of self are products of this consciousness, then altering that internal landscape can profoundly change our reality, without a single hair on our body needing to transform. It's the ultimate internal metamorphosis. The question of becoming that guy, identity, empathy, and the self. This leads directly to your compelling question: if I start thinking, processing, understanding, and perceiving information like someone else, can I become that guy? Here we're talking about profound shifts in identity and perspective taking. Empathy as a tool, normal human capacity. As humans, we have a remarkable ability to put ourselves in another's shoes. This is often described as cognitive empathy, understanding another's perspective, and affective empathy, sharing another's feelings. When we read a book, watch a movie, or have a deep conversation, we are, to a degree, trying on another person's reality. We can adopt their viewpoint, anticipate their reactions, and even feel a resonance with their emotions. The more deeply we engage, the more our own consciousness might temporarily align or simulate theirs. Neuroscience shows that specific brain regions, like the medial prefrontal cortex and mirror neuron system, are involved in this ability to understand and even simulate the mental states of others. However, it's crucial to note that empathy is a tool for understanding, not complete transformation. It allows us to grasp how someone might feel by imagining ourselves in their specific situation. This is useful for a particular scenario, but it doesn't mean we can fully embody their entire being. Empathy helps us consider: what if I were in that situation? How would I react? It's not designed for handling or processing information exactly as that other person would, which is precisely what we need to do to truly become them. In healthy individuals, there's always a clear boundary. You remain you, simply understanding them. The limits of becoming. Even with deep empathy, you can't literally become another person, because your consciousness is inextricably linked to your unique brain, your unique life history, and your unique body. Your memories, your baseline personality traits, your neural pathways, and your genetic predispositions are distinct. While you can simulate or understand another's internal world, you can't overwrite your own fundamental operating system. When the boundaries blur, science versus non science, what science says, dissociative identity disorder, DID, and personality disorders. When an individual's personality or sense of self seems to fragment or shift, psychology looks to conditions like dissociative identity disorder, DID, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, MPD. Dissociative identity disorder, DID. This is a complex psychological condition most commonly a severe reaction to overwhelming trauma, especially in early childhood. It involves the presence of two or more distinct personality states or alters that recurrently take control of the individual's behavior. Each alter may have its own distinct way of perceiving, relating to the world, and even its own memories. Crucially, the individual often experiences significant gaps in memory, amnesia, for events that occurred when another alter was in control. It's not about becoming someone else by choice. It's an involuntary coping mechanism where parts of the self become disconnected. The shapeshifting here is a fragmentation within one's own psyche, not a shift into another pre existing individual. But what if someone could control these alters, voluntarily switching between distinct identities without distress or memory gaps? Would it still be considered a disorder? From a medical perspective, the diagnostic criteria for DID as defined by manuals like the DSM-5 specifically include the presence of distress or significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. The involuntary nature of the shifts and the associated amnesia are also key. Therefore, if an individual possessed the ability to consciously and seamlessly shift between distinct facets of their personality, with full memory, and without experiencing distress or functional impairment, it would likely not be classified as DID. Instead, it might be viewed as an extraordinary form of psychological flexibility, a unique cognitive ability, or even a highly integrated form of self management, rather than a clinical disorder. The very definition of a disorder implies dysfunction and negative impact on life. DID appears to demonstrate that a person can become someone else, and science seems to concur, at least hypothetically, when there's conscious control over it, almost like a psychological power. However, when this control is absent, it manifests as a disorder. My question then is, why can't we intentionally achieve such a state, even if we are inherently capable? Advantages. If we could, imagine having distinct identities, each excelling in different areas. For instance, one skilled in mathematics, another in history, and a third in science. This would allow us to harness various skills and abilities. Disadvantages. However, the concept of a singular I might vanish, replaced by a collective we. The question of who am I could remain unanswered indefinitely. Furthermore, if one identity is active, another might be dormant. And if multiple identities were active simultaneously, it would likely lead to chaos. Personality disorders, e.g., borderline personality disorder. These are different from DID. While individuals with personality disorders, like borderline personality disorder, may experience intense emotional dysregulation, an unstable self image, and rapid shifts in mood or behavior, they typically maintain a single, albeit often unstable, sense of identity. They don't have distinct alters that take control, nor do they experience the profound amnesia characteristic of DID. What non science says. Possession. In many cultures and belief systems, sudden, dramatic shifts in personality, behavior, or even voice are attributed to possession. This refers to the belief that an external entity, a spirit, demon, ancestor, or deity, has entered and taken control of an individual's body and consciousness. Cultural context. It's important to note that what is considered possession varies widely across cultures. In some spiritual traditions, voluntary trance states or temporary possession by benevolent spirits are seen as sacred and healing. In others, involuntary possession by malevolent entities is viewed as a serious affliction requiring exorcism or spiritual intervention. Overlap and interpretation. Interestingly, some presentations of DID, particularly the possession form, as described in diagnostic manuals like the DSM-5, can outwardly resemble traditional concepts of possession. Individuals might describe feeling as if an outside being has taken control, and their behaviors may seem foreign to them. However, from a scientific perspective, these are understood as manifestations of internal psychological processes stemming from trauma, rather than literal external entities. The individual's interpretation of their experience can be deeply shaped by their cultural and religious background. The soul question, and finally, the idea of a soul which shifts from one shell to another. Philosophical spiritual concept. The concept of a soul that is distinct from the physical body and capable of transmigration or reincarnation is central to many spiritual and religious traditions, e.g., Hinduism, Buddhism, certain esoteric beliefs. In these frameworks, the soul is often seen as the eternal essence or consciousness that inhabits different physical forms across lifetimes, learning and evolving. This is the ultimate non physical shapeshifting, where the core of being transcends the physical body entirely. If the complete handling of information is attributed to personality consciousness, then what is the necessity of a soul? And if a soul is needed for that, do individuals with DID possess multiple souls? Scientific stance. From a strictly scientific perspective, the existence of a disembodied soul that can transfer between bodies remains outside the realm of empirical verification. Neuroscience largely views consciousness as an emergent property of the complex brain, While science can't disprove the existence of a soul, it currently lacks the tools or observations to study it directly. In conclusion, while we can't literally become another person in a physical sense, our consciousness allows for remarkable feats of empathy and perspective taking. When those internal boundaries become fractured due to trauma, science identifies conditions like DID. And across cultures, the human experience of profound internal shifts continues to be interpreted through both psychological and spiritual lenses, including the ancient and enduring idea of the soul. This interplay between inner experience, brain function, and cultural belief is what makes non physical shapeshifting such a rich and compelling topic.